Welcome, traveler. This video will probably be the last video that I do of short books. I've already spoken about short books in a few other videos, but this is going to be the definitive guide to short books that I've read and recommendations. By now you might think that I can't read long books. I do read long books. Just sometimes it's nice to pick up a short one. So in order to go through these books quickly, I've tried to summarize each book in about 3 words. It's not going to be a long review, but just a little snippet of what it's about. I'm going to be starting from the lowest page count to the highest page count. Unfortunately, short fantasy books are very rare, so these ones are mainly going to be classics and some sci-fi. I must also apologize for my frizzy hair. I should never wash my hair before a video. Live and learn. The first book on the list is The Man Who Would Be King by Rudyard Kipling. 64 pages. Pretty short. In 3 words, racist funny adventure. Obviously, it's a product of its time. The British colonials were not very sympathetic. I think there's a moment that he shows a little bit of sympathy, but nothing really changes. Great story about 2 con men who try to become gods among these tribes out in the middle of nowhere in India, which is hilarious. The next book on the list is The Art of War by Sun Tzu, coming in at 68 pages. Probably a little less because the paragraphs are very spaced out, if you can see that. So super easy to read. Military or business logic is the 3-word summary. It's useful if you've got a katana, if you're out, in feudal China, needing to strategize and take down your enemy. But a lot of people apparently use it for business, to be able to identify rival businesses and in order to lead your company with an iron fist. Useful as well if you're writing medieval fantasy and you're trying to come up with strategies. The next book on my list is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson, coming in at 70 pages. In 3 words, sci-fi horror mystery. Really gripping, just fun. And obviously we all know what the twist is, but the way it's built up, try read it as though you didn't know what the twist was. And either way, just seeing how the plot is put together. The next book on the list is The Pigeon by Patrick Süskind. I think that's how you say his German name. Coming in at 77 pages. Author of Perfume, which is brilliant if you haven't read it. In fact, I would recommend you read that instead of all of these books. But The Pigeon, in 3 words, is the first-person mental breakdown. Stories about a guard outside of a bank whose job is to open the door and sort of look out for trouble. Sees a pigeon one morning in his hallway, freaks out. The next book, classic Animal Farm by George Orwell, coming in at 95 pages. Most people know this. You've either seen the cartoon, you've studied it at school if you're in the UK. 3 words, slow political allegory. I enjoyed it. It was a nice book, nice characters, but it's all symbolic of Russia's communist takeover. The next book is really interesting. I read it quite a long time ago. It is The Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, coming in at 96 pages. Now, this one's interesting. I haven't written a 3-word thingy. But what I can say about this was it was kind of overhyped. This is a good book. I'm not saying it's bad, but I was expecting to be blown away. Now, there's a scene in it where, as they are trying to travel around Africa to this sort of forgotten outpost, they come across these ships firing off into the forest, into this jungle, just sort of aimlessly, and it really depicts the colonial mentality of being able to just bombard these natives who have nothing at all, while these invaders have these huge cannons, and it's quite horrific. Really interesting story. Again, talks about ethical issues too. A lot of racism. The next book is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemmingway, recommended by my friend Charlie, who really knows his stuff. So he recommended me this. really short read. This one is 99 pages, just short of 100, and again, you can just blast through this. 3 words, I would call it a cozy coastal adventure. Now, there's a lot more going on in the book. There's some really great themes. I would probably need to go back and study it first, but all in all, the characters, the descriptions, the sort of small event that happens that becomes quite important. Just a lovely book to read. Now we're going to start dabbling a little bit more with some sci-fi with The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. The Time Machine is only 102 pages, and it's really easy to read. I think I probably sat down and read at least half of it in one day. If you haven't read this, and you consider yourself sort of a sci-fi nerd, you're missing out. Even, anybody who isn't into that kind of stuff. This guy shows up at a dinner party where some crazy guy comes and tells them how he's just been to the future. The story is fantastical. It really is, though, ahead of its time. The science that they talk about in here, again, not sure how accurate it is, but really thought-provoking, and this concept of being able to jump forward and backwards in time, but remaining in one space, which is really a cool concept. Really going down the sci-fi rabbit hole is The Word for World is Forest by Ursula Le Guin. This one was 128 pages. Now, this one didn't feel like 128 pages. It felt longer. The writing is quite small, so I think that the word count's probably a bit higher, but nod to Ursula Le Guin and her Earthsea Quartet and the foundation of fantasy that she established, but she's got a whole range of sci-fi novels. Apparently this one, I think, is the 4th one in the Hessian, oh god, I'm going to get that wrong, the Hessian, in 3 words, deep social reflection. Now, there are 2 stories that go on in this one. There's like a human logging enterprise. These ships have found a world where timber is freely available, a resource that apparently is scarce in the sector. Universe? No. Galaxy. But there is a tribe of these very little creatures who have learnt to coexist, and it is the conflict between money-hungry, destructive forces with these native creatures who have learned to coexist. All I'll say is the concept of killing is really focused on, and the morality of sentencing someone to death or killing someone with reason or not. The next book, as I've mentioned before, is The Sign of 4 by Arthur Conan Doyle. Sign of 4 was only 127 pages. Obviously this is Sherlock Holmes. Obviously this is Sherlock Holmes, so my 3 words are thrilling detective mystery. Super lovely, great to read. Just, you want to find out what goes on. The pace is great. The next book, something I didn't think I would be doing, but it's A Breach of Peace by Daniel B. Greene. The YouTuber Daniel Greene, who has fantasy news. So shout out to Daniel Greene. Huge reader, and he tried his hand at a novella, 134 pages long, quite short. My 3 words are a great start. Nothing exceptional. I enjoyed it. I can't remember a whole lot about it, to be honest. Sorry, Daniel. The next book is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Spoken about this a few times as being on some of those lists that I've mentioned before. Sorry if this is, boring, but this one comes in at 159 pages. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels like 50. In 3 words, poetic, tragic romance. I mean, there are only a few books that are this well written, that are this engrossing and engaging and just so beautifully written. There's actually another one in my list here, which joins that club, and I will be mentioning a few others. But if you haven't read this, it's so short. I just go do it. Go do it. Go read this. The next book is The Post Office by Charles Bukowski, coming in at 160 pages. I have mentioned this one before in some of the other videos, but in 3 words, this is bleak, debauched, kind of hilarious. There's real moments where you're not sure if you should laugh or cry, but really interesting and a really easy read because it's so gross that you want to find out what happens. And it's quite real, quite gritty. You go, oh man, that could happen to anybody. So, good one. Here is the one that classifies as some of the best written literature ever, in my opinion, and that is The Great Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald. This is beautiful. It's poetry. This is 172 pages. We're getting up there, near the 200s. The symbolism, the themes, the characters, the locations, everything about this book is nearly perfect. And one of the things that I loved the most was how beautifully it was written. Now, some other authors that match this, my expectation of beautifully crafted words. We'll mention Tolkien because, you know, he's good at what he does. But when I'm talking about lyrical, beautiful prose, and that also includes Mervyn Peake, who did the Titus Groan series, gothic sort of fantasy, caricatured, strange, really beautifully written. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss is also brilliantly written, beautiful prose. You know, I've got the second one up on my to-read list, which I've rearranged my books, yay. And so A Wise Man's Fear is there as well. Can't wait to read that just for the writing. I don't care about the series, the story, the characters. I just want to see how he writes. Another beautifully written story I must have mentioned in one of my videos is The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle, which is apparently one of Patrick Rothfuss's favorite books as well. And as I've mentioned, Giovanni's Room. If you actually know any books that are beautifully written, that, I mean, I don't really care about the story even, and it doesn't have to be fantasy, but if you know any writers who know how to command language and paint with their words, let me know, because I'm definitely interested in that. The last book in our very long list of short books is Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut, coming in at 177 pages. This one again was a little bit slower, but my 3-word summary is overhyped sci-fi trauma. Now I know that might rile some people up. It was good, don't get me wrong, and you know I understood as far as I think anybody can the parallels between the sci-fi story that's told and the traumatic experience that this guy experiences during war and seeing the city of Dresden get firebombed, which is horrible. But yeah, this one, people recommended it and it's a classic. Well, there you have it for my list of very short books. I'm not going to do another video. I'm so sorry. If you really love the short book videos, I'm not going to make any more. Until we meet again, safe travels.